Good evening. We'll open the meeting of the Walker Planning Commission. The first item on the agenda is reviewing the meeting minutes from the September 15 meeting. If you had a chance to take a look at it, any questions, comments?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay, a motion by Scott, supported by Joe, to approve the minutes of the September 15 meeting. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Next item is a opportunity for general public comment. Our item on the agenda tonight is the Jason Ridge West project. So if you've got a comment about that, there'll be time to talk about that later. But if you've got any general comment beyond that, this is an opportunity to come forward and give us your name and address. No takers. We'll move on to the project. Again, Jason Ridge West, final area site plan review and preliminary area site plan update. Tricia, if you could, as the planning director, introduce that, please.
Thanks, Terry. So we've got Jason Ridge West on the agenda again. This was tabled at your September 15th Planning Commission meeting. I think the general consensus was that there were too many loose ends, and I believe that the developer has brought some revisions that everyone will be satisfied with. So just for the record, this is the final area site plan review and preliminary area site plan update for Jason Ridge West. And the action requested by the Planning Commission is...
Hold on, do we need a motion to take this off the table?
Yes, we do.
Very good.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to take this off the table.
All right, we have a motion and
Support.
support. Okay, motion by Jason, supported by Pat to take this item off the table. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. So the Planning Commission is being asked to review the final area site plan and for units 1 through 29 of Jason Ridge West condominium development and preliminary area site plan update and to grant approval with or without conditions, tabling or denial of the request. And again, this project is located at 71 Sunset Hills Avenue, and it is roughly 14.5 acres. The zoning is RPUD 1. And this is on the east side of Sunset Hills off Jason Ridge Drive. And we have Jeff Clausen of Jason Ridge Investors with us tonight, and also Chuck Hoyt, who's the project manager from Nede. So I'm not going to go through all the history with you again, but I just kept this slide in here just as a refresher. So starting out in 1999, and here we are in 2021, which would be the third phase of this development. But as you may remember, there was a 6-year period where no action had taken place on the expandable portion of the condo. And so the Condo Act essentially has developers start from scratch. So that's why we have a new name, starting unit numbers from number 1, and a whole separate association. So I'm going to try to make my comments brief. I'm just going to go over what the revised plan had in terms of what we had requested. And so the landscaping and buffering minimum standards were established in on sheet U101. And so for plantings at each unit, as well as in various places throughout all the phases of Jason Ridge West. And they have established some clearing limits in the, is it the third phase? Or is that the second phase with the cul-de-sac? The western phase. Third phase, okay. So clearing limits were added to the plan, and it shows it's roughly 50 feet from each unit. They were able to update sheet U-101, the PASP update, to include the proposed uses and structures associated with the open space area, the shared open space. And we also asked them to add the street lighting specs and details to that PASP update sheet. They did that. They also added a note calling out the future easement on Gale Avenue, where that connection parcel is. And so I've added a condition of approval for a development agreement for the conveyance of that, of the ownership of that parcel. And we also asked them to add some parking calculations. And so they broke that down for us. And one thing that I did want the Planning Commission to discuss is whether there is enough parking proposed for the future phases of Jason Ridge West. So I'll just zip down here to this table. So you'll see that Jason Ridge 1 and 2, phases 1 and 2, they both have roughly one space per unit. And so in Jason Ridge West, you have 0.69, 0.61, and 0.45 for Jason Ridge West Phase 3. And so if the Planning Commission wants to, have the applicant establish a minimum parking standard, like one space per unit, that's something that you'll need to discuss. Not sure if there was a standard from the original PASP, because there wasn't a lot of content there, but just in looking at those numbers and the average spaces per unit, you might conclude that it was meant to have one space per unit. So I'll let you guys discuss that. And yeah. So one of the questions that some folks from the audience had last week, or a couple weeks ago, was whether or not separate condo associations were required. Is there some way, I remember Scott mentioning something about maybe there was like a loophole within the Condo Act that would allow for the associations to be one. And we reached out to the city attorney to kind of look into that a little bit further, and it was concluded that there are no provisions in the Condo Act that would allow for the associations to join together. And so separate condo associations it is moving forward. And then the developer is responsible for allowing our attorney to review the agreements between the association that would address the shared use of the stormwater, the roads, and the open space, and all the common things that both associations would be using. So they have already kind of gone through with that step and recorded that document. But we would like our attorney to still review that document, and if any changes are necessary, then we would ask that those be made and then re-recorded. And then we also had some correspondence with our attorney regarding this parcel here that has that connection to Gale Avenue. And so what our attorney had advised us to do is have the developer enter into a development agreement, mainly just to document the conveyance of public property to the associations. And so they'll work on that draft, and then we will have the applicant take a look at it and provide any comments or suggestions, and then all applicable parties will sign, and then we'll have it recorded. So I added that as a condition of approval. You probably saw my email today where I modified the model motion by adding that condition. And then we just have, we also have the FASP, which has some revisions that I'm just gonna, bring to light here. So, the previous plan included the Gale connection parcel, that acreage, in with the density calculations. We asked that that be corrected. The revised plan, shows that acreage being subtracted out of the overall, density calculations, so we're good on that. We had asked for legal descriptions for both the Gale Avenue parcel, and phases 1 and 2, and then also Jason Ridge West. So there really should be three separate legal descriptions found right on the plan. And then for grading sheets, this still remains a condition of approval. They provided us with an MBO table, but we would like to see the unit types within that MBO table. And we have master deed documents that they will be drafting. And I'm gonna have a correction here in my report. I've mentioned master deed amendments, but since this is a brand new phase, this will be a whole new master deed, a separate standalone master deed. So that'll be reviewed by the city attorney prior to them recording it, and then they've already provided us with the escrow to cover those costs. And then just some last minor FASP items that we'd like to see corrected. Just adding phasing to the PASP update sheet. We would ask that you avoid pear trees in your landscaping species for various reasons. And then there's a drainage easement for the existing detention area, and library and page reference would be helpful there. And there's a 10-foot easement called out for pedestrian access to the northern project limits at the end of Ambrosia Drive. It really should say proposed easement, because I don't think that thing has been established yet. So, and then we also would like to see the setbacks shown in the general notes section of sheet C102. And also sheet C102 should be labeled FASP instead of site layout. It's just a zoom in of the FASP. And so with that, I'm recommending that the Planning Commission approve the proposed FASP for Jason Ridge West Phase 1, Units 1 through 29, and PASP update for Jason Ridge Condos and Jason Ridge West, located at 71 Sunset Hills, per the plan set, last revision dated 9/22/21, subject to the 11 conditions provided in the model motion to be read into the record. And that's it for me.
Okay, thanks, Tricia. Any comments, questions? There'll be an opportunity. Okay. With regard to the parking, now, they each have an enclosed parking space, right? The garage?
They each have a two-stall. They each have a two-stall garage, correct? Yep.
When Chuck gives his little narrative, I've asked him to expound on the parking for your education too, if that's helpful.
Yeah, because it looks like they've got a lot more parking per unit than a little less than one.
You mean overall?
Yeah. If you got a graphic of one of the building pads,
Yeah,
and maybe
I've got a whole explanation of that whole thing that we can run through if you'd like. Just give me a second.
So you're talking total parking.
yeah.
That table is referencing additional visitor parking.
Okay.
Well,
So okay, does that speak to the driveway as a parking space too, or not?
I don't believe so.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, because Jason Ridge West Phase 3 has 5 parking spaces, and there's 11 units.
Okay, I would think that the pavement area, the driveway in front
Should
of
be
the garage
included.
should be included as a parking space. And if that's the case, then they probably have more than enough, would they not? That's just my impression, but,
Well, that space in front of my condo unit isn't for my neighbors to use. But if I have guests over and my driveway is full, then where are they gonna park? They can't go park in my
well,
neighbor's.
that's where there's spaces outside of what's right behind each,
So maybe he's gonna explain this all to us.
okay,
I can do my best.
all right.
Are you? Yeah.
Oh,
Scott's quiet.
okay, all right. Scott?
I don't wanna run through my whole, I'm sorry. I don't wanna have to run through this again as we did last time, but just, I think that the issue is gonna be discussed about the 23-foot depth. I don't think you made any comments about that last time, so I guess that's my only real caution, is to make sure you discuss that, because if you just say, make a motion and, recommend that my comments be added to the motion as a condition, then I don't know where we land on that, so make sure you discuss that. There were some drainage issues last time that, there's a relatively delicate design in the plan now that would account for that. You know, I think the devil's in the details about how it gets built, so we have to kind of watch that pretty close, but that's the responsibility of the developer, obviously. And then, I think Tricia really covered the rest of the comments, so I'll get out of the way and let you get right into the meat of this.
Okay. Any other comments or questions of Scott? Okay, we'll allow ask for the developer to provide a presentation then.
Yeah, absolutely. Chuck Hoyt from Naderville. So, yeah, both the city engineer and planning director done a good job of sort of doing a thorough and accurate job of reviewing all this. So tonight, we'll just address a couple of the issues in here and then be here to answer questions too. I won't run through sort of a point-by-point thing, but we're here to answer any question there is. So let's start off with that, with the parking. So here's kind of how we looked at it. When you look back, and this is the original PASP that you're looking at right here from 1999. So we did an original calculation of what was the original intent of this site. When you looked at this site, there were 41, and we'll call these visitor parking spaces. And it's really, we'll call them street visitor or on-street visitor parking spaces, and we'll clarify what that means in just a minute, because you brought it up, I think a key point. So again, 41 spaces for 104 units, so that calculates out to 0.39 parking spaces, visitor parking spaces per unit. So then if we go to the current proposed, sorry, I have a bunch of markups on here. I'm going to zoom right in onto this calculation right here. So if you look off to the side here, and everything in dark is what you have on your currently submitted prints. Everything is red is anything I updated, just to make it clear what I've sort of tacked on from what you have right now. So if we take that 0.39 that we are saying was the original intent, and if we apply that to this property now, you can see that each individual phase, as we have them broken out, exceeds the 0.39. It does go up to 1.06, and it does go down to 0.45 for the section that is 11 units. So again, in total and individually, each phase does meet that threshold that we are proposing of the 0.39. Now, the other piece to it, which I think is a good thing to bring up, is the spaces accounted for the driveways and for the garages. So that's an interesting thing to look at, because there's another little matrix that we've put together over here. And I'll just walk through it step by step. So again, same matrix you see, everything is broken down by phase. So you have the number of living units, which is now down to 99, and that's what the same it was on that just other table I was just showing you. The visitor spaces are the same as what you've seen there. Again, those are, we'll call them the on-street visitor spaces. But then there's also unit parking spaces. Now, unit parking spaces accommodates 2 garage parking spaces for the homeowners and 2 more vehicles that can be parked in the driveway. And there's even a little depiction that we can show you here. If you, I mean, I'm sure you can imagine it, but if you can imagine a attached unit. Now, this is full capacity here. It would be very unusual, I would think, to have this condition, but it is possible to have 2 vehicles in the garage, 2 vehicles parked behind. So you'd have, if you just look at unit 3 there, you can accommodate 4 vehicles. So again, back down to our matrix. Calculates everything out there. If you include the visitor plus the unit parking spaces, you have a capacity of 472 vehicles at full capacity for this site. Spaces per unit is broken down here per phase. Now, if you were to extrapolate the 1999 approval and apply that 4 parking spaces per unit, you end up at about 4.3 parking spaces per unit in the originally intended PASP. We exceed that on each and every one of our phases here. So that's sort of how we've looked at the parking, is that yes, there are some phases that have kind of a minimal amount, but when you look at it holistically and take into account that there's driveway parking and garage parking, there seems to be well over the sufficient amount. And we also rely on the developer experience as well in this sort of thing, in what is kind of a proper ratio. And I know they've been very comfortable with it in terms of the number of spaces provided for the number of units that are there.
To Scott's point, the length of the driveway. So, did you happen to make any changes to that to extend it?
We
So
did
that
on some of them from the most recent, but we maintained it in units 1 through 6, and I should go to the one that actually has the dimensions. Units 1 through 6, we are seeking an exception. Forgive me that I gotta find the one that has the dimensions. Units 1 through 6 do have a 23-foot length from the front of the garage to the sidewalk. Our understanding, and I'll zoom in here if you can see here, 23 feet from the front of the garage to the sidewalk. That is less than the recommended 25 feet. It was our understanding that really the intent of that is to ensure that a vehicle can park without overhanging the sidewalk. 23 feet is more than sufficient to handle that. The other thing is, if we push that building back, we start to encroach on the rear property line. That was sort of deemed as not ideal for this situation, because we're at about 25, 23 feet in these locations. So it was our proposal to seek an exception for those first 6 units that were quite close to the 25, and we feel like we meet the intent of what that dimension is supposed to be, again, with just the ability to be able to park a car there, which any car should be able to park in 23 feet. So it was our intent to be able to seek an exception for that area.
How long is a Silverado extended cab?
Don't know, I can look that up if you like.
I can tell you the Ford F-150 is 20 feet 9 inches. That's a pretty good example. It's the most popular truck in
Yes.
America, so.
Okay, thank you.
I do have a question. It's my understanding that the minimum setback off the rear lot line is 23 feet. And if that's the case, it would appear that there's enough room at least for 3, 4, 5, and 6 to attain the 25. And granted, lots 1 and 2, they'd fall a little bit short. They'd be a little bit closer, but they wouldn't be the full 25. So it would appear that you'd be able to, if you take it to the minimum setback along that north lot line, it would reduce the number of exceptions down to 2 units rather than the 6.
Terry, I made the same note, that 3 through 6, you could, it seems like if 23 feet is acceptable on 1 and 2 for that rear setback, you could probably get 3 through 6 there, and I don't have an issue on 1 and 2 giving you that latitude versus leaving the others, or I guess getting that fixed on the others.
Yeah, I think that's something that we can accommodate, for sure, we can make that adjustment. One other note that I didn't mention before either is that a lot of these new attached unit homes, or even the single families really, do have the potential to have a third stall garage. So for whatever that's worth, I didn't factor that into the calculation, but I just thought I'd pass that on.
What did you just say?
Third stall is possible for some of these units, third parking
Oh,
stall.
God, I don't see possibility on the ones we're looking at.
No, and in fact, I don't know on the site plan, maybe some of them do, yeah, looks like maybe number 19 shows it, so I apologize, not what we're looking at here, but didn't know.
I'd also make the comment on number 1 and 2 that you could change the depth of the building and widen it to get the same square footage. You could meet the 25. 23 in the back, just change the shape of the building a little bit.
I think that may significantly change the layout and the constructability of it, so.
2 foot.
Can I speak to that, Tom? Or Terry, I'm sorry. Can I speak to Tom's point?
Yes, please.
Typically, in the condo community, when we enter into a condo community, it's our intent to offer one floor plan that we go with. So if, to throw a one-off building, it throws challenges to a production builder in terms of design and efficiencies. So it does make it more difficult for us to try and create a one-off design. But I understand the point, it just makes it a little more difficult for us.
Any other comments or questions concerning the developer's presentation? Is there anything else that you'd like to offer with regard to the?
Go ahead.
I would like to add one thing, because I want to make sure that we address it. The Association for Jason Ridge and the association to be formed for Jason Ridge West, we are meeting with the neighbors, represented here by the board, on Tuesday to, let's take a step back. Trisha's report fully showed that the previous developer who we purchased the property from recorded an example or a declaration of easement, and then how the costs were to be shared with current association and our association. When we meet together on Tuesday, that's something we're going to be talking about as well. That was a right reserved by the previous developer in the master deed of Jason Ridge, so he recorded that, but I want to make sure that, because they were not heard last time, I want to make sure that we're working together as neighbors, and they understand that we're meeting on Tuesday, we're going to talk about how that's addressed. Okay, so
Yep.
I didn't want that to be something that they had to worry about.
Okay. At this point, I know that we've closed the public hearing, but we have some neighbors here, so we'll give you an opportunity to ask questions. Could you?
I'm sorry, we normally have a podium and it's missing.
Podium thief.
My bet's the mayor took it.
You need to be.
If you wanted, do you want to come up here a little bit closer and then you can speak into one of these mics?
No, my question is regarding to Gale.
Gotta get closer to that.
Sorry, I've got the mic right here.
You mentioned the Gale thing, you're gonna deed that over to who?
Yeah, so the city of Walker owns that parcel currently.
Right.
And so a development agreement would kind of just document the conveyance of the ownership from City of Walker to the association.
Which association?
Both Jason Ridge West and Jason Ridge Condominiums.
Okay, I guess my comment then would be that Jason Ridge has absolutely no use for that, the Gale. You might as well, this is just me, I'm on the board, but I don't speak for the board. We've been here 21 years, and that's never been available, we've never used it, we don't use it now, we blocked it off. We don't want to snowplow it, we don't want to do anything with it. So, I don't know, we can talk about that when we talk to Jeff again, but I see no reason for us to have any use for it at all. Okay?
So, it's a safety, public safety, emergency services
Right,
purpose for that secondary access. So once that whole condominium development reached a certain number of units, that's when the requirement for the secondary access kicks in. And so it's something that would be used by our emergency services, like police, fire, to access your condominium development and their condominium development. So that you can certainly
Okay.
work that out with
Sure,
Jason Ridge
but
investors.
police and fire would never come down that street either.
Well, if there was an emergency and there was,
A lot of ifs there if they did.
Well, that's why we have to be prepared.
Yeah, okay,
So if the access off Sunset Hills was blocked for some reason, we would have another way to get into your development.
right. Which hasn't happened in 20-some years. But okay.
You better knock on wood.
The other thing, by the way, we're on the west side of Sunset Hills, not the east side.
Okay,
You
did I,
keep- you-
did I misspeak?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, I mean, it's in your notes
Yeah,
from the last time.
okay,
Anyway,
thank you.
thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
Yes, my name is Pat Hoekstra. I've been a resident of Jason Ridge since 2003. And the comment to what Ron addressed, when you said that it's put in for safety, it goes back, that was put in because of Valley Farms. That's when it was created. And that's when Walker approved it, and we were against it at that time, for a lot of reasons. Safety, we spoke of all the reasons. A matter of fact, wrote Dan Powers a letter at the time stating all the reasons that we should not have it. You said it's for emergency, but we've lived there for, since 2000. You never required it at that time. We only had one entrance. It was put in because of Valley site, not because of the other project, because that wasn't even started at that time. My question is, the roads in Valley site are public. This entrance is public at the time. Why doesn't the city of Walker maintain that? You approved it. We're taxpayers like everybody else. We have a private road. We pay for the snow plowing, the repair of it. You're gonna plow Valley's, site farms. I personally feel, and I think some of my neighbors would agree with me, that we're really not getting the bang for the buck. You turn our private road into a public road, and you want us to pay for the whole thing. And I really feel that's not justice to the taxpayer.
We appreciate your comments, thank you.
Dave Wapick, 50
unfortunate that I couldn't make the previous meeting, but just from a high level point, could you help me better understand, I don't need all the nuts and bolts, the reason for two separate condo associations moving forward?
You wanna take it, Jeff?
Yeah, I'm glad you.
Thank you.
No problem.
So,
It's not plugged in.
no,
It probably looks just like TV though.
Just
I'll just act like it's on.
speak loud.
Okay, so, Michigan Condo Act, which is state of Michigan law that governs, condominiums, requires that you have X amount of time to expand a project. So Jason Ridge, as it was originally, approved, was 140 units, give or take, something like that. And as the first two phases were done, they were able to expand with no problem, but then it sat for a period of time, which would not allow, under the Michigan Condo Act, for it to expand again. So there's 6 years that you have to take advantage of expanding a condo project, otherwise, to protect yourself and the existing condo and the new condo, you really need to then form a separate association and a separate condo project. So it's all generated by the Michigan Condo Act. I think the city has gone to the city attorney and, gotten his opinion. He concurs with that understanding. Does that help?
yeah, no, that does. It does tremendously, thank you. But I also have another point regarding the Michigan Condo Act, which I unfortunately got myself into a spider web with the original two developers. And I know we got laws in this country and everybody doesn't follow the laws, but there wasn't the amount put into our reserve fund that Michigan condo law states. So unfortunately, Pat, myself, Ron, and other neighbors, you know, we eventually are now in a predicament that we are trying to work our way out of that empty bucket that was created by the previous developer. So I understand that there's laws, and, but that does help me better understand the need to two separate associations. Thank you.
My name is Joan Keith, and I reside at 137 Ida Red Lane. To Pat Hookster's point, yes, I back her 100% and then some. Also to Ron. Gale, if J.R. West is willing to take on Gale as a private road for them, we are all for that. And we'll talk more with Jeff about that on Tuesday. The other point I want to bring up is a huge concern, and the word huge doesn't even begin to touch it, is the amount of traffic. The entrance off Sunset is the main entrance, and Gale, yes, was put in for emergency use for the development behind, I understand that. But our development was a very quiet and serene place. And the concern is that one main entrance, 104 units, of which we predict the majority of people will use, very few will use Gale. It's a big concern. We do not, there is a sidewalk, but it butts right up, the road butts right up to the sidewalk. Not safe. I don't know if anything can be done, but we'll talk with Jeff about that too, but I want you to be aware.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
I don't know if this is working or not, but I can speak loud.
Yep.
My name is Denny Webb. I live on Jason Avenue, Lot 8, kind of toward the end of it. Last time I was concerned about drainage, what they're doing, and I see that they really haven't done anything. They're still talking about putting a matting down there. I don't know how the future goes with these things, whether you can come back if what they're doing isn't working as this development goes forward, you know, and to what degree they're doing things, whether there's any recourse. It seems like everybody, whatever stated 20 years ago, everybody's going back So I don't understand really the process. Maybe you can explain to me that as they go through, because it's kind of up in the air, well, we're gonna do this, but there's no detail in it, there's, you know, no goal or what they're trying to attempt to do. They just have mapped out putting the matting down, which, you know, is that a 10-foot ditch? Is that a small swale? You know, just the whole thing doesn't make a lot of sense. There's gonna be standing water in them, whatever, but I guess part of the thing is that where does it go from here, or is there recourse once they start actually doing stuff, but the results aren't adequate?
Well, first, in terms of the developer, you've heard his concern. How will this design address that?
Well, let me jump to this sheet here. So, Mr. Webb, this is you right here, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So everything I've highlighted here is our subsequent items that we've put onto the print since our last meeting, and they should show up on your drawings that you have right now. So based on the comments that we heard from Mr. Webb and from the city engineer, we added the things that are highlighted here, and I'll just go through them kind of one by one. It kind of starts over here at spot grades, right? Spot grades of this sidewalk that comes through. You know, side note that this does comply with ADA. So you see we start off at about a 736 elevation, down to 735, all the way down to a 731, and then we get into more of our 2-foot contoured area. So you can see it slopes down this direction, 730, 728, 726. We've also added in these water discharge arrows, which is the indication of which way that water runs. These little loops here show how that water drains. We've also put in this invert elevation of 726, so you can see how water would channel down this way. This is the soil erosion and vegetation control mat. I don't know if we have a dimension on it, but I could draw a little scale on it there if I can find my measurement tool. Call it 12 feet. You can see that the idea is that it channels water as it continues down this way, down into this sort of drainage swale area here. So the idea is, and the design is, that all water will be maintained on the Jason Ridge West site and not infiltrate into anything into this, into these neighboring properties. That's how this is designed. That's how it should operate. Of course, it'll take maintenance. Of course, it'll take some on-site care from the developer, and they've certainly, I think they even were on record last month, and maybe they'll do the same this month, that they'll ensure that this is working properly, and it's channeling water away from this property line. So that's how we've designed it. That's how we've sort of responded from last month, is adding in these grade lines and ensuring that we've made those adjustments, that it functions properly.
Okay, thank you.
My only question is, basically, there's gonna be 2 ditches next to each other, because there's one there already.
We need to maintain water on our site.
I understand that, but my point being is that how deep, I don't know. We just had the heavy rain the other day, so I can tell you that all the water's coming off that property into that ditch that's there now. Now, maybe it's because it's not graded anywhere back.
Well, and
in there, don't know.
I think the majority might be coming from the backyards here, channeling that way. We don't have the grades on there that, but I think a significant amount comes from.
Well, no, I'm not saying it does. I'm saying it does, but
I
you
think
can see
that's
the other
the
water running the other day, Monday, whatever day it was.
Chuck, just to confirm for Mr. Webb, I think that this is the case. The existing swale, the ditch, that's the Valley Site Farms
Yeah,
swale?
right.
It is. There's a swale approximately in this.
That's a swale there. But what I'm saying is, if nothing's disturbed other than putting another ditch in, then I don't know if you're gonna, leave a mound between the two, or, I guess it's hard to envision what it is. I know a lot of our neighbors are starting to put French drains in and stuff, trying to slow, because so we don't have standing water. I mean, nobody wants a bunch of mosquitoes around us. We don't need mosquito nest thing either, so I guess that, all I'm saying is a lot of water comes down through that area, the way this, because this is raining all the way from that passive space even beyond that, all the directions.
Yeah, and this back area too is gonna get graded out a bit, as you can see, to sort of push things down that way, if right now it's
Well, at
pushing this
53
way.
and 54, which I can't really, if that backyard's gonna, they're gonna, I don't know how you, because you can look at a deck that's sticking out on the back that's hanging over the grade, so there's no backyard there?
It starts sloping down away there.
Yeah, I don't understand that, but is that left like that?
It
Or
would
do you
be
think
finished.
Huh?
It would be a finished yard sloping down. If that's what you're asking.
Well, I don't, that's what I'm trying to explain, trying to figure out what they're actually gonna do there.
Yeah.
Because they're gonna drop it down a lot of weight, because that means that if the design was to send everything west, you're sending it south first, and then
A
diverting
portion of
west.
it is, and that's where it gets captured in this area here and channeled down.
Well, I just wanna know what your recourse is if it doesn't work.
Okay, that's what I wanted to, in responding to that, I defer to the city engineer.
Well, I'm certainly not an attorney, but I guess there's a couple ways for recourse. You've got private property owner one and private property owner two. So you certainly have that right, but I think more on the public end, there will be a stormwater permit for the condominiums, and they'll have to build that swale and then certify it later and turn in a form that's sealed by a professional engineer or a licensed surveyor that says we built it according to the plan, or we deviated, and then they'll have to sign off on a waiver that says it doesn't have any negative impacts based on what the design was.
Okay, I just want, like you said, there's, I get these, everybody's arguing over the last 20 years of this project about everything, so how it really goes in the whole thing, but you still have some public or some ability to make adaptions to what they end up actually doing. I don't know, because they have 3 phases, so I don't know if they come back every phase and have to give you more information on the development of that particular phase.
Yes.
If it works.
Yes.
So there'll be another chance to have input in that.
I got one other question for Scott. To your recollection, in the area that Mr. Webb is located, was there a separate design for the south side of this property line to handle water?
Yeah, I don't remember the specific contours, but generally there would be. I guess I'm a little troubled that, I think I just heard that the contours that are on here are incorrect, which means that they'll have to adjust these again before it can be built, so that the stormwater design reflects.
It's not really showing the contours on our side over here, or the way it is currently.
So I think,
Because they're working my lot at the corner down there's like 720, 702, so they put it pretty good.
Well, I guess what I'm getting at is that it looks like there was a design to handle the water when yours went in initially, and now you've got the adjacent property being developed, and there's a design to handle the water there. What's important in both cases is that it's, one, each of them are built according to the plan, and two, that they're maintained so that it functions the way it's supposed to.
Backyard, so we mow them, I mean, obviously,
Yeah,
that's bigger, it's just part of the backyard.
but the grades, whether the grades that are there now match how it was designed when yours was developed, may be a factor in this.
You guys are way above my pay grades.
Okay.
Way ahead of me. I just was, I just don't wanna have 2 big ditches, one full of water.
Yep.
I can control mine, but I can't control somebody else's. That's fine. But if we have an opportunity to speak again about it, when they go to phase 3, we'll know by then exactly what, they've done.
Yep.
Well, thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, I think that's back in our deliberations now, given the information that's been submitted. There's revised plans have been prepared to address a number of the comments in here. Are there any questions about the recommendations from staff, the plans that we have in front of us, and being able to proceed with taking action on this?
The questions outstanding, the parking issue, I'm not super troubled by the amount of parking that's proposed. I had the same thought that you did, that they've got the driveway parking as well that kind of alleviates a lot of that pressure. for each unit. So I don't worry too much about them not having sufficient visitor parking. I don't suspect anyone in the condo will be having any gatherings of too great a size for this to accommodate. So for that part, I just feel pretty comfortable with the parking proposed. We talked about the 1 through 6, the driveway depths. I'm okay with 1 and 2, how they are. 3 through 6, if they can get those into compliance, I would be okay with 1 and 2 left alone. As far as the Gale stuff, I know that's like kind of a condo thing that they have to work out, but for my part, I do remember when we reviewed the Valley Site Farms project, we put that in, and a big component of that discussion was that it was partly to facilitate the expansion of that condo project as well. So now that we're seeing the condo expansion, it probably does make sense for that condo expansion to be a part of the accountability for maintaining that, would be my thinking. Again, something that they'll probably have to hash out, but that's just my inclination on that. So I don't know, is there any other major outstanding things that we haven't, that hasn't addressed for either of you two or anyone else on the board, commission? And as far as the drainage part, yeah, so it seems like phase 3 is a big component of how that water will move and when that'll become a really major issue as far as the way that you're gonna have new water moving. Cause where phase 1 is at, it seems like it should move down that track pretty well, I would think. Right?
Well, there is a storm sewer there, so I think it'll get solved way earlier than you expect.
Yeah.
It'll probably be the initial grading for the condos should account for that.
Yeah.
And I wasn't asked the question directly, but it does appear to be a really shallow ditch. So if there's a shallow ditch in the Valley View lots, you'd have shallow ditch, hump, shallow ditch.
Yeah.
And that's just part of due diligence for taking care of each other's own drainage.
Yeah, but I suspect based on what I'm seeing, we should be okay, and it should get accounted for on the stormwater permitting, and I'm pretty comfortable with what I'm seeing as far as that part. And again, phase 3 will have another chance to make sure everything's what we need to see for that part of the site. So, yeah, is there anything else I'm forgetting to address, or do you think that covers it?
Staff? Anything you feel that's hanging yet?
Or anyone with contrary thoughts?
I'm satisfied with the breakdown of the parking that Chuck explained. So it sounds like if the planning commission is okay with what's been proposed, I think if you add that, yeah, that would be really helpful. And I had that one extra condition that I emailed you about the development agreement, which I'm guessing Steve probably has in front of him because he's prepared like that.
Got it on my phone.
Any other comments? Pat, I see you're poised.
There was just the one comment on Gale Avenue regarding the city taking that over. Are we going to say the condo associations are going to work that out?
I can tell you it wasn't built to city standards or
Well, that was gonna be
city
my next.
inspection or city dimensions or anything like that, because that was an integral part of the original overall Jason Ridge development, not to serve the plat. It's not for the plat folks to drive through the private condo roads. It's for redundancy in the condos, both for the existing phases and the future phases.
Well, and I remember specifically a big part of that discussion was if and when the Jason Ridge condos decide to do those future phases that we had expected, that is a must-have to facilitate that expansion. So now that we're talking about that expansion, that's where this kind of comes into play. And now that it's a separate condo association, you can probably have discussion about having that accountability fall to that expansion. And it kind of makes it cleaner for everybody involved, I think. But again, it's something that you all can have more discussions about it, but I don't think the city is probably the right person for it.
Right, and
right
that's-
entity for it.
That's why I wanted to bring that up, that to Scott's point, that if the city were to take it over, we would turn it into a regular road, which would make it easier to come into the condo association, because we'd have to plow it and so on, versus the way it is now. If we did that for your respect, to put the island in there and make it so that it's not as easily gone back and forth through there. So that would be something that we'd have to consider as well.
Sure, yes.
You know, I feel from listening to your discussion that we're kind of getting a runaround.
No. Could I clarify, there's no runaround. It's a case where the connection that was required, and it's continuing to be required.
That's true, and I understand that, but this never came up until Valley State Farms wanted to develop that back acreage. The city of Walker never said anything about having more than one entrance to us.
They did, actually, and in my previous packet, I have some documentation, some meeting minutes from, it was from either 1999 or 2003, where the planner at the time indicated when that connection would be required, and it was either when the next phase of Jason Ridge condos is built, or when the Valley Site Farms develop. At that time, it was Jason Ridge Estates. So it's always been a plat, but then Valley Site Farms, it was a different developer who came in. I don't know if I'm making any sense right now.
Are you saying that Valley State Farms was part of the condominium complex?
No, but way back in the day, when this condo development was first began, back in the late 90s, the plat was originally called Jason Ridge Estates, which is now called Valley Site Farms. So, I mean, I could bring up that documentation if you want me to, but it's always been in the plan for it to be there.
I agree with that. It was our understanding that the original developer that started Jason Ridge site agreed that once the project would get filled with 104 units, that we'd have to have another access to go in. I understood that at the time. But my point is, that would have never been put in if Valley Farms hadn't been developed. You made us put it in now, but you wouldn't have put it in when you did. And because if we had to put it in, why is it public now? Why doesn't it belong to Jason Ridge? We never designed it. When I came to the city, Dan Power's office told me that they had approved it, but what they were gonna do is put a divider in there, thinking that that would discourage people from Valley Site Farms to use it. We never designed it. I think if we had designed it, we'd have never put an alley in it or a division. That's gonna make it worse for snow plowing. I mean, I just really feel that we're getting a runaround, like I said before. We pay property tax, we've got a private road, but because of all of this, you have turned our road into a public road. So why don't you start snow plowing it? We get nothing for our taxpayer, we do our own road maintenance, we keep it up. We have our own, street lights, we get no benefit from you guys. Won't you lower our property tax? You come and
Ma'am?
do road maintenance.
We appreciate your,
Technically, what you're doing is you're depreciating our property. Thank you.
thank you. Commissioners, are we ready to offer motion?
Yeah, I can do that. Sorry, I've gotta pull it back up. Here we go. All right. I will make a motion to approve the proposed final area site plan for Jason Ridge West Phase 1, Units 1 through 29, and related site improvements and PASP update for Jason Ridge Condos / Jason Ridge West, located at 71 Sunset Hills Northwest, per plan set last revision dated 9/22/21, subject to the following conditions. This is for case 21-024. The applicant shall address all the items outlined in the city engineer's report dated 9/29/21, with the direction that the 23-foot driveway depth will be permitted for condos 1 and 2 on that site. A cross-access agreement must be drafted and reviewed by the city attorney prior to recording. The applicant shall record the easement document connecting Gale Avenue and Jason Ridge Lane, which should specify ownership and responsibilities for maintenance, and provide a copy to the city. The applicant shall establish minimum standards for visitor parking on sheet U-101, or at least provide the parking matrix sufficient to what has been discussed in the planning commission meeting. The individual grading plan template sheets that include a unit type, MBO elevation, driveway, and building layout easements adjacent to the unit, and commitments to sections 18-33 and 67-18 of the Walker City Code as a set for each unit prior to issuance of any building permits for this phase. The applicant shall specify unit types on MBU table provided on sheet U-101. The applicant shall provide accurate parcel number and legal descriptions for each development area within the PUD, Jason Ridge Condos and Jason Ridge West, as well as for the easement parcel. The applicant shall provide a draft of the master deed documents, as well as any agreements pertaining to the shared use of roads, common elements, and stormwater management facilities for review by the city attorney prior to recording. A recorded copy as approved by the city attorney shall be provided to the planning commission prior to the issuance of any building permits for this phase. Planning director, not planning commission. The applicant shall enter into a development agreement for the city of Walker for the purpose of documenting the conveyance of the 180 Jason Avenue parcel that contains the Gale Avenue connection to the Jason Ridge and Jason Ridge West Condominium Associations, to be drafted by the city attorney and recorded with signatures from all parties involved prior to the issuance of any building permits for this phase. The applicant shall provide 3 sealed sets of drawings that incorporate all conditions of approval prior to the issuance of any building permits for this phase. The applicant shall address all the other items as listed on page 4 of the planning director's report, dated 9/27/21, prior to the issuance of any building permits for this phase. Findings of fact per section 94-213 and 94-215. The Jason Ridge and Jason Ridge West PUD, as described by the final area site plan, does continue to meet standards required by section 94-213. The final area site plan is in substantial compliance with the previously approved preliminary area site plan for Jason Ridge Condos, our PUD 1. Jason Ridge West 1, Phase 1 will be designed, constructed, and maintained so as to be harmonious and appropriate in appearance with the existing or intended character of the general vicinity, and shall not change the essential character of the area in which it is proposed. Jason Ridge West Phase 1 is adequately served by essential public facilities and services such as highways, streets, pedestrian ways, police and fire protection, drainage structures, refuse disposal, water and sewer facilities. Jason Ridge West Phase 1 will not create excessive additional requirements at public cost for public facilities and services.
We have a motion. Is there support?
Support.
Motion by Steve, supported by Pat. Any questions? I just have one clarification that on the parking depths would go to 25 on
Correct.
3 through 6, based upon the indication by the developer that they will make the adjustments on the rear yard to accommodate that.
Correct.
Okay, no other questions? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you. Are we, Scott, do you have any updates?
I do not have any updates.
Is Kenny open?
I drove it.
Kinney's open.
All right, very good. Tricia, any comments?
We have the English Hills, FASP coming up in, next month on November 3rd. And we should have J&H Oil, the gas station, back on the 20th. And then we have a couple of other smaller projects that are coming your way also.
Okay,
Do we not have another October meeting?
We have one more on the 20th.
Oh, okay, so that's what you were saying, the J&H.
Yeah. And I was supposed to brief you guys on a new, we have a new recording app through our iCompass meetings portal. And I just wanted to let you know that I have to start recording about 5 minutes before the meeting starts. I don't know if that's going to change, but just to make you guys aware that 5 minutes before the meeting starts, we are recording. You don't have to shut up, but just, you
No
know,
gossip.
keep it clean.
okay. We appreciate the forewarning.
When's Chick-fil-A's official day opening? 7 days? We got the police all ready for that? Police and fire?
Got a sign out front with a countdown that they change daily, and they've worked extensively with the police on what they anticipate. They have the room for about 50 cars on their site in line, which is a lot. So that's the good news. The bad news is, they could stack people up a whole lot deeper, and they could be there for hours getting angry and upset. But they're off the public road at least.
There were a whole lot more than 50 cars at the one that opened over on the southeast side of town years ago.
Well, even now
At the belt line.
in there,
Yeah.
can't get more than
They're sitting on the belt line and they're running
But they
through
have
parking
the
lots.
internal ring road should help, so those vehicles that can't be contained on their own site, it's gonna mess up the Starbucks construction, people that are trying to go to Culver's, the Westtown Apartments, but they're gonna try to use the access that goes through Westtown as their long tail to this line.
That little park in the front, for some reason I thought that was gonna be bigger. And when the thing is so tiny compared to the Chick-fil-A, you don't even notice it. I thought of it, for some reason on the map, when they had the plans, I thought it was gonna be a little bit deeper and bigger. And it's this tiny little park, it's like one lawnmower and boom, it's done.
They had that special planning commission view.
Yeah, that's right.
Just look at it on the plan.
And I don't know if it's still there, but if you go over by the police station, by the courthouse, they have the 3D model. Is it still there, Scott, of the Deltaplex?
What?
And I'll tell you what, they had islands in there and they were landscaped.
Stop now, you're gonna make me angry here.
Asphalt.
Yeah, there was gonna be a fountain, that was gonna be a mecca.
But is that 3D thing still over there by the courthouse?
It might have burned or been destroyed,
Got
but,
moved?
there's a trail of broken promises in our history.
All right,
Make a motion to adjourn.
I have a quick question for Jason.
Your neighbor.
Signing meeting minutes.
My neighbor.
Are you okay with a digital signature? You are? Okay. So,
Attorney, okay, with the digital signature.
well, I mean, that's kind of how we have it set up for all of our other meetings. So if it's approved, and then our meeting minutes will reflect that, and I can just plop Jason's digital signature on there. So I don't have to, because obviously I'm not good at bringing the minutes, the last page of the minutes for you to sign at every meeting. I don't know why I missed that, but it's,
We use digital signatures in all of our construction industry. Isn't it possible to just sign it digitally that way rather than faking your signature into a stamp?
Yeah, that's how we do it.
Okay.
You get the document and you sign it.
So it's legitimate that you did review it, you did sign it.
I can send it to you that way if you want to sign like that.
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, let's do that.
all right. Very good.
Thanks.
We stand adjourned. Thank you.